So the People's Transition is a model developed by TASC in 2020. It's a participative decision-making model, and it views climate action as an enabler of local development. It understands, I suppose, that people have more pressing priorities than climate change, whether that's housing or the cost of living crisis. So it aims to, I suppose, deal with those challenges and priorities in a way that's climate smart.
The partnership has long had a presence in the community, but we felt we needed to maybe divert some more of our resources and staff to try and tackle some of the issues. At a time when the country and the economy appears to be doing well for so many, it was alarming to see that the levels of deprivation in the area, statistically at least, was increasing rather than decreasing, which would be the trend nationally.
And from there, Liam reached out to us and had an interest in the model. And together, I suppose, based on the brilliant kind of grassroots work that's being done in the community of Larchville and Lisduggan, but as well the risk there and the potential of an unfair transition to zero emissions. It's those two things, I think, that really brought us to focus on Larchville and Lisduggan. So typically a People's Transition project would have 3 phases, but there'd be a mapping phase where we'd look to build up a picture of the community, to understand who's there, who's at risk of being excluded, so we can understand how to include them. We look at census data, policy reports and analysis, and kind of have initial meetings with community groups and community leaders. From there we have quite an intense community engagement phase. The real aim there is to listen to and learn from the community and to distill out those local development priorities. The last phase then is what we call a climate solutions phase, and that's where we co-create climate solutions with the local community that try to respond with what came up in the first 2 phases of the project.
There was already a very active community locally, who are winning awards and getting recognition nationally. So they were ready to be tapped into, so that was great. We had a community development worker, Sarah Jane, on the ground, which was fantastic, and who knew the community. So we didn't experience barriers necessarily at the start. We weren't too sure maybe how to start, and I think coming into contact with TASC gave us that focus to make a start, I suppose.
Well, the first thing we had to prove what the need was. So TASC came on board and printed off all the questionnaires for us. So we went door to door to door. So people, we knew what they wanted then, rather than what we wanted to impose on them. Just committees sometimes can get carried away. So we knew exactly what they wanted, so we could tailor to that.
There was a lot of the focus groups. The one-to-one interviews was done with Nicola Kent, who was brought in as a consultant to do a piece of work. So Nicola would have done the one-to-one and the school interviews. She would have went to the Presentation Secondary School and St. Paul's Community College and talked to 4th year students and 5th year students at the time. We also had groups, like we had young people. We had Maria, who's based upstairs here in the Manor St. John. She's the Manor St. John Youth Service. So some of her young people were used for interviews as well as a group. So we had quite a number of different focus groups.
Well, one thing we did get back from all the forms we sent out, every house in this area, over 800 houses, got a form to fill in. And we were actually surprised at how many people actually do care about the environment. There is really an environmental push here in the neighbourhood, and people are really interested. They care about what's going to happen in the future, they care about their families, and they care about everything else. So it's from what the feedback when we got from them has actually changed our attitude too, that we could actually do more.
The standard of the community we lived in, the feel about the place, the tidying up the greens, the regeneration, bringing on a regeneration of the whole parish. It came up then with the redoing the houses, getting the insulation in, getting that kind of thing done, the fuel poverty. So a lot of people that would be elderly who are living in fuel poverty, we didn't know about them, until they came back like that. And when the likes of the TASC came along and saw that that's the way we wanted to go, they secured the funding for us. So now we have the Scouts, every other community group, Pathfinders, the disability group, the youth groups all involved. So when we buy the trees, we just go out and plant them. And they never even name the streets. I always slag in the newspaper to say, It's the place where the streets have no name. And the same with the parish hall. We have a parish hall. For the sake of a couple of quid, we'd have all the different community groups in there because the roof has fallen off it and it needs to be redone. And for the sake of a few quid in grants, we'd redo the roof and we'd have a vibrant parish hall where people dance classes, indoor soccer, it can all take place, because it's ridiculous having a community hall in the most deprived area in Ireland and that we can't, just get the funding to get that done.
Waterford Area Partnership have really helped us in everything we wanted to do. Going through things, what the parish actually wanted. There was a lovely young lady there that actually did drawings. As people made the suggestions, she put up this drawing, and it was lovely. And now to see some of those things that we discussed coming into fruition, things we discussed are now actually happening. And community was a big one, and green spaces was brought up, which we've got here. Well, at the meetings we had, it was brought up about mental health. That was a big thing, that you need green spaces for mental health. Also, there's a lot of elderly people that are living alone. And by coming somewhere like this, to the graveyard, to Francis Court, people can sit down and have a chat. And again, community, that's how you get to know your community.
So our plan for the future here is to get the graveyard on the Waterford history map. And recently that was highlighted by the fact that we had a visit from Nancy Smith, the Canadian ambassador, which was absolutely fantastic. And like this morning, I was at an event, a SICAP event for community growers, and shown photographs of the graveyard, and a lot of Waterford people and outside Waterford, and they didn't know the place existed.
Well, I think there's more confidence in the groups, definitely more confidence in the groups. They're more confident and they're more trusting of other people, I think, because I suppose that when the project was taken from here many years ago, there was that little bit of lack of trust. So I think that's starting to come back a bit, and engaging with more people and having more confidence in themselves. There hasn't been many negatives. I suppose the only negative for me as a worker is this is not my only area of work. I also do of other areas in the city, and this has taken up a lot of my time. The positives of the the whole process, is recognition for the lads for the work that they have been doing anyway, and getting their issues dealt with properly. Like when we're talking about the retrofitting of houses and stuff like that, it's about following through on all that stuff and being just an advocate for them.
In Waterford City Council perspective, the value of TASC and the people's transition collaboration. If you look at the area of the public policy cycle, when climate action came on the agenda, it was very obvious to some departments in the council, that likes of roads, housing, environment, what their roles would be. But it was much more difficult in community development work and for the community section of the LCDC to find where they would fit in with the climate action agenda. So this collaboration and this scheme has helped shape and define the role of community development work in the whole area of climate action. Regarding the recommendations in the report, SICAP's role as I see it, if you look at the report, it says that if climate action is to be enduring, it must be inclusive, and that's the role I see for SICAP. When people are presented with change, one of the first questions they'll often ask is, how much is this going to cost? And with public supports like SICAP, we can bring climate actions to areas where disadvantage might exist. So we don't just reduce our carbon footprint and reach our carbon reduction targets, we also tackle social issues like fuel poverty and things like that in the disadvantaged areas of our communities. Whether the initiative has prompted any specific changes with regard to how Waterford City Council engages with the community and improves participation, it might be a little bit too early to say, but I think that the collaborations are very meaningful, and I think that the public bodies have responded very well to the communications received from the communities. Initiatives like this reinforce the message that climate action is everybody's responsibility, but public bodies need to take the lead and need to bring workable schemes to the communities to address climate action and benefit our communities.
These type of projects are really important from the perspective of climate action and specifically climate justice when creating awareness locally, because they're a great way to highlight that climate action is for everyone. It's for all types of groups in all type of locations. Sometimes we only hear one type of voice or from one set of people. So it's great that everyone is being considered and we can look into areas in great depth. It also shows the benefits of climate action. They're not only just the obvious environmental ones, but the positive impact it has on our well-being, both mentally and physically, better air quality, greener spaces for people to just be around, to walk around, greater community interaction. And often these type of groups, they're already doing and thinking about climate action, but they're just not calling it that or classifying it as that. So it's great for it to be called out really clearly for what they're already doing. So urban greening is really important for physical and mental well-being. I worked with the Waterford Area Partnership, TASC and the key groups in the area on their project ideas and application form for the Community Climate Action Programme. I'm delighted to say that the group were actually successful and they got over 5,000 in funding for a biodiversity greening project in the area. These type of small projects are absolutely brilliant because they're a great gateway for people to take climate action and to just, what might seem like a small project now can grow into something massive in the area for them in the future. And it's great as well to see the greening of these areas, which is going to obviously, it has a great cooling effect in built up areas, which we're only going to see rising temperatures with climate change. But also there's scientifically proven well-being, mental and physical benefits to greening spaces. So it's great that we can see it happening in these areas.
If we are experiencing barriers, it's trying to pull the various actors together. Like we've just come from a meeting this morning with the Department of the Environment, with the Council, the Climate Action team were there, the Housing team were there. So for them, a lot of those there present this morning, they're hearing all this for the first time. So that's been the most difficult bit, because we can only do so much. We're a small local development company. We don't have the resources. What we can do and what we're trying to do is to bring together the various parties that can make real impact and real change. So that's the barrier at the moment to making that happen.
There, I suppose, several challenges emerged through the engagement process. One of the biggest ones is struggling with the cost of living as well. This was a couple of months ago now, still at a time when the cost of living crisis is a challenge nationally, and particularly people struggling to keep up with energy bills and that experience of living in energy poverty. As well as that, mental health is a challenge across the community, and that appeared to be often interlinked with the experience of living in deprivation. And it connects with living in energy poverty or crime, and all of those things are linked together. There was also a real appetite for more informal and formal education and training opportunities for young people across the community, and people really saw that as a potential way away from crime for young people who are just starting out. And in the report and the project, we very much linked that with the potential of retrofitting, because you can develop, hopefully, training and apprenticeship opportunities within, the work that's being done if we took an area-based approach to it.
I suppose progress on some of the recommendations or priorities, at least highlighted by the community, which was around the high cost of energy and retrofitting was a project, a more accessible neighbourhood in terms of how to get around, not only about public transport, but even pathways and safe areas across the communities. They were priorities. And the green space, creating a greener environment for people's better and improved mental health. I suppose there's progress on some of those areas in that working with the three residents associations, we secured funding under the Climate Action Fund on behalf of those groups for a biodiversity project in the area, so that's going to help. We met with the engineering department in the council there recently around the accessible transport project that has identified Lismore, Larchville and Lisduggan, and they reached out to us because they had initially tried to engage with the communities without much success, and then they learned of our work with the community through this project and others. So we met, and they, with our help, with the partnership's help, are going to have more public meetings in September and October, and hopefully there'll be greater take up, but we were already able to give them some of the priorities as identified in this project, which will inform their accessible transport project. And I suppose in terms of the retrofitting then, as I mentioned, we only met then this morning with the council and the Department of the Environment, Climate and Communications, and some ideas around solar panels and some potential for some retrofitting of a pilot project within the Lisduggan and Larchville communities was discussed. So no definitive progress there, but at least the conversation's on the way, and there's a focus on the communities that can only, we would hope, lead to some impact in the coming months and years. SICAP has been central to this program and has enabled and leveraged, projects and ideas that we didn't envisage initially. While the People's Transition Project and TASC's work is, maybe you could say, be climate focused, what also has come out of this project is a number of great ideas. For example, there's a number of intergenerational projects between some of our older and younger residents and communities, which will start in the next month or two. There's some circular economy projects with a repair cafe. Hopefully that will come to fruition in the coming weeks and months. So, having that SICAP kickstart to this project has enabled so much more, and a number of other kind of projects very much in their infancy have already been enabled. For example, in addition to the repair cafe and the intergenerational projects, we are, in collaboration with the County Council, with SETU, with the ETB, later this week signing a memorandum of understanding that will see Lisduggan and Larchville designated as a learning neighbourhood as part of the UNESCO network of cities around the world.